Hi, welcome. Steve Timmis, one of the founders of Sempar. We're going to bring to you a collection of bite-sized videos that just deal with hot topics in the form of Q&As. I'm joined today with James Finucane, who's our business development manager, but also looks after our kind of commercial finance side. Hi James, you okay?
Hello, yes, very well, thanks Steve.
Today we're going to try and talk a little bit and demystify HMRC's time to pay arrangements.
Yeah.
I guess a great starting point would just give an overview of time to pay arrangements and the recent changes to them.
Yeah, I guess time to pay, it is what it says on the tin. It's basically agreeing some terms with HMRC to be flexible on your tax payments. It wasn't really, it's been around for a long time, but it wasn't really as big a thing as it is now. I think COVID massively brought forward the importance of that, and HMRC were really flexible with businesses. On the back end of that, you've kind of seen some abuse of time to pays, and now they're getting a lot stricter. But effectively, it's any tax, so pay as you earn, corporation tax, VAT are the most common ones, self-assessment as well sometimes, spread over a typical payment term, spanning a period of time, dependent on circumstances.
It's usually dependent on amount, isn't it, and length of debt and compliance with that tax, isn't it?
And there's certain areas or thresholds where you'll be placed around in different departments in HMRC. You might be put onto the field enforcement team where you get a visit from a field agent. It might just be handled internally with HMRC, or it could get to the point where it gets to HMRC's large debt team, and then it's different processes, and it's understanding those as well, and having experience in dealing with it.
And you do, where we have clients where they have a need, occasionally you have a need for arranging those time to pays to help their own business. You do a lot of that work for us, don't you?
Yeah. And actually, funny you say that. So from doing that from perhaps during COVID, where it was really easy, it's evident now that things have changed, and HMRC are becoming a lot stricter. Their criteria is changing. What seems to be their ability to extend payment plans is shrinking, and the length is getting shorter. So it's really interesting.
I mean, most payment plans, how long are they typically being arranged for?
So, typically HMRC's target is to get that paid within sort of 12 months as a minimum. It depends how far away you are from arranging the time to pay and when the payment was actually due, because you could be calling them 6 months after it was due in the first place, in which case they'll kind of want you to be paid up in 6 months. But 12 months is a general rule of thumb.
And they'll take into account things like the compliance history as well. So if it's a VAT time to pay but they haven't filed the returns, then they're less likely to
absolutely, and there's a few caveats with a payment plan. Once you've got one, you have to stay up to date with all future arrears. So that means meeting all future obligations, submitting and paying all other taxes in the company.
So it's really important that businesses think through the time to pay arrangement before they enter into it, isn't it?
Yes.
And maybe do some forecasting.
Definitely. Time and time again, we'll see people agree to payment plans that perhaps unravel in a few months just because they haven't been able to meet up or keep up to date with their future obligations. There could be a wider discussion there where you forecast and actually anticipate that problem rather than just solve it there and then by speaking to HMRC and just.
But also the earlier that businesses deal with HMRC, the better, isn't it? So rather than leaving things to the last minute, the more proactive they are with HMRC, the better the result.
Absolutely, yeah. For one, if you arrange a payment plan before the deadline, it mitigates any late filing fees or penalties that are applied. HMRC have introduced interest over the last couple of years, which we'll come on to a little bit later on, but being proactive, if you call HMRC before it's due, you're instantly on the front foot with them. You show an intent. I think they will deal with people the majority of the time that are behind on their debt, so you stand out then on that call immediately.
And I guess HMRC want you to have almost run out of options when you get to a time to pay arrangement, so they want you to have tried to get lending. So from a lending perspective, what what options does a business have when they're into tax arrears?
Yeah.
You know, what sort of lenders are out there that will actively help them with that?
So it's funny you say that. When you actually set up a time to pay, one of the questions HMRC will ask is, have you sought any additional funding? So, you know, that is something they expect businesses to try and do. It's to try and meet every obligation before coming to them.
And there are specialist tax lenders, aren't there?
Yes, so, I mean, there's lenders for VAT, pay as you earn. I mean, you can kind of get a loan for anything, really. It's a bit like insurance. You can insure anything. You can kind of get a loan for anything, as long as the criteria and the purpose of the loan works.
Yeah.
And potentially looking at a loan prior to a HMRC payment plan, it gives you more options later down the line. Getting that loan initially obviously keeps you compliant for a period of time. Your interest it depends on the business and type. But HMRC interest is at 7.25% with the 2.5% plus base at the moment. That obviously could change. But something to note that not many people consider, HMRC interest isn't tax deductible, whereas other commercial loan interest is. So effectively, depending on the corporation tax payable, you could be saving 19 to 25% on your commercial interest, but not on your HMRC interest. So when you actually, I guess if you add that interest or that saving onto HMRC's interest, it comes out more about 8.7 to 9.5%. Which is right in the region of commercial loans anyway. So you're much, I guess, you may be better off or better suited to get a commercial short-term loan in to pay the arrears, manage it well, and should you ever need to then, at a later date, arrange a payment plan, it's potentially your first time getting one and you're not asking for a second one.
Yeah. And if you reverse that, so if someone goes to HMRC to get a time to pay arrangement initially, and then obviously looks like they might fall foul of that, or they need more support, and they then go to a lender. Lenders don't. How do lenders view, I guess, the time to pay?
Arrears. Yeah, I mean, negatively to put it. You know, it's how have you got yourself in this position? What are you going to do to get out of it? Whereas, as you put it, if you get that loan initially when there's no arrears, it's a lot easier to acquire. I mean, you may not be able to acquire one if you get to the point where you're in a payment plan and need further funding. Yeah. So it's always better to consider your lendability and the credit rating of the business that an underwriter would ultimately have to sign off on. They will be much more inclined if you go to them and say, right, we're anticipating or we're forecasting this gap that we need to fill. It's our HMRC VAT. Sales have been down over the last period, or there's a reason for the shortfall in cash. We just want to plug this hole for a period of time, but we've got no arrears at the moment. I mean, that's a massive tick, and it shows that you've been proactive with your forecasting. You're not coming to them after the fact. You're saying, we've got this upcoming problem, and it's just a much more positive conversation to have with an underwriter. They can kind of see, right, well, that's what it's for. And it's interesting, the tax elements, they seem to always be relatively easier to acquire than maybe like just an unsecured loan, because the lenders know exactly where that money's going in the business and how it's going to be used. If you kind of just go with a working capital or something like that, it sometimes raises more questions. And sometimes, if there's a viable business there, the lenders like to help the business fulfil its HMRC. And it's not always businesses in problems as well, or in distress. It could be a cash flow preventative measure. You could do this proactively and say, right, well, rather than actually pay the VAT over every quarter, or the pay as you earn every month, let's do this over pay it monthly instead, and actually defer it.
And it might be businesses that for strategic reasons want to hold more cash in the business, or keep cash available, because that gives them cash for opportunities that might come up strategically. So if they've locked all of that cash into HMRC, then, like you say, going and getting a lend for a specific reason might have some challenges. Whereas if they've kept their cash and got the lend for the HMRC debt, then effectively they keep their cash flow pretty fluid, don't they?
Exactly, yeah.
And it means that the business is easier to manage.
Exactly, yeah. And it's, you can have good conversations with the lender around that. You can say, look, you know, we built this cash reserve thanks to your support with our funding requirements. We now though want to go and do this, and more often than not, that lender will be very open to supporting you with that already.
Yeah.
You're already a client of theirs. You're a good client. You're paying your arrears off. It's HMRC arrears. They understand why you're doing it. They'll be inclined to look at that opportunity first and support.
So in summary, is businesses out there need to be proactive in terms of the HMRC debt. So you know, see it come in, notify you know, their accountant or ourselves if they're a client of ours early, so that we can be proactive for them. You know, forecast more than a month ahead of yourself, so make sure you're looking ahead so that you can see these pitfalls. And when you're signing into any loan or HMRC arrangement, it's making sure that you can fulfil that, or you believe you can fulfil that for the length of the arrangement. Consider debt before you consider HMRC arrangements as well, so that you've got more options, but also potentially might be more cost effective as well. And if anyone's got any queries or questions, they can contact yourself anyway, can't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Just get in touch and let us know. But
Brilliant.
if you are in that position, reach out. There's always options and ways we can support.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me today, James. That's been a great insight into HMRC arrangements, and we'll see you again on our next bite-sized video.